South Carolina finished at least the regular season last year as one of the hottest teams in college football. Will that carry over to 2025? Well, we're going to look at their schedule, break it all down for you, and give you a very early projected record for the Gamecocks in 2025. South Carolina's SEC schedule will, of course, look just like the one last year, except you flip the home and away. But the non-conference actually is going to be a little bit tougher. So let's break down this 2025 schedule, and you can see right away, week 1, Virginia Tech in Atlanta. So that's going to be, their big non-conference game outside of the Clemson game. Neutral site. It's probably going to be a little bit more of a home field advantage for South Carolina, but still, that's a fairly neutral site game there. And Virginia Tech is a team that had a disappointing year last year, but they lost a lot of close games. So I look at them as a team that could potentially break through this year. Maybe they don't, we'll see, but I think that will be a challenge. And of course, the interesting factor here is Shane Beamer going up against his dad's old team in Virginia Tech. So that's going to be a fun one. South Carolina State, then Coastal Carolina, so a respectable group of 5 game, and then Clemson at home to close things out. So I do think this is a tougher non-conference schedule for South Carolina. So now let's look at the SEC schedule. Let's look at the home and away. And again, these are going to flip. So at home in the SEC, they'll have Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Alabama. And then on the road, they'll have Missouri, LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. So yeah, they lost at home last year to LSU and Ole Miss. This time they got to play them on the road. That's going to be tough. I think if South Carolina played Alabama at home last year, they probably win that game. They were very close to winning it anyways. So let's just look at it like that. If they lose to LSU and Ole Miss again, but they beat Alabama at home this time, maybe that gets them to the playoff at 10-2. But I'm looking at that Missouri game, that Texas A&M game. Those are on the road. Virginia Tech's not going to be easy. Clemson's not going to be easy. Oklahoma's going to be improved. So this is a pretty tough schedule for South Carolina. Let's go game by game. So they'll start again with Virginia Tech on August 31st. Then it's South Carolina State on September 6th. Vanderbilt on September 13th. Normally a pushover, a cupcake type game, but no, Vandy's different now. They were different last year. I expect them with Diego Pavia back to be a solid team again this year. So that won't be an easy one. Then you've got Missouri on the road September 20th, and then Kentucky at home September 27th. So those are the first 5 games before their first bye week. And it's interesting when you look at these games, Virginia Tech, Vandy, Missouri, Kentucky. South Carolina probably going to be favored in all those games. They have a real shot to win all those games and start 5-0. But those games are tough enough that they could slip up. They could lose, I would say, to any of those opponents. Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Kentucky. They could lose one of those games. So that's going to be the story. If South Carolina is going to be like a playoff contender, they have to start 5-0. I think just they have to, because you look at the rest of the schedule, it's going to get much tougher. So those games will, I think, set the tone for the season. Then they get their first bye week, and then it's a pretty tough stretch. They've got LSU on the road October 11th. Again, good news is they do get a bye week before this game, but still, that's going to be a tough one. Then they're home for Oklahoma on October 18th, then back home for Alabama on October 25th. That'll be tough, obviously. And then Ole Miss on November 1st on the road. So you've got 2 road games in there. You start and finish with road games. Then you have Oklahoma and Alabama in the middle at home. That's just a really tough stretch. And you look at that stretch, if they split those games, if they go 2-2 in those games, that's, again, why you've got to start off 5-0. And then they'll have to win the games down the stretch. If they can somehow win 3 of those 4 games, then I think they're looking really good to make it into the college football playoff. But that final stretch is not going to be easy. You've got Texas A&M after a bye week on the road. So I do like that their bye week, both of their bye weeks come before tough road games, LSU and Texas A&M. Actually, those are probably going to be the 2 toughest places that they have to play all year. So that really, I think, bodes well for South Carolina. They have the bye week's at a perfect spot. Also, that second one is after a road game at Ole Miss. So that means if you look at their conference road games, 3 out of 4 road games come either right before or right after a bye. So that really, really works out well for South Carolina. They definitely had their bye weeks, I would say, at the perfect times. And then you got Coastal Carolina November 22nd. Again, a respectable group of 5 team. That one, I think, will not be easy for South Carolina. And you can't be. It's a trap game. I mean, look, it's right after Texas A&M. It's right before Clemson. It's in state. It's not a rivalry, but it's that Coastal Carolina team is going to come out with a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to look to shock the world and pull off a big upset. So I would not sleep on that game, but South Carolina should be the better team. And then you got Clemson, rivalry game November 29th. Of course, they're going to be very good this year. Home game for South Carolina, though, so you feel like they've got a pretty good shot to take care of business in that one. But overall, again, it's a very tough schedule. If you look at the final, I would say get past those first 5 games, not bad, but then those final 7 games, pretty tough. But you love the bye weeks. That's my big takeaway. The bye weeks are the perfect time, and those bye weeks give them a chance to maybe go on the road and pull off big wins. So how does this stack up with the rest of the SEC? Well, they're pretty much right in the middle in terms of winning percentage for their opponents. Again, this is the winning percentages from last year for the 2025 opponents, which are the same, so that you could look at this either way. But yeah, they were 48% win percentage last year. 31-33 was their record. Again, all the opponents for South Carolina. So that's pretty much right there in the middle. It's not horrible. You know, it could be tougher. They don't play Texas. They don't play Georgia. But they don't get too many easy games either. It's kind of like they play a lot of teams that are in the middle of the pack. And a lot of probably close games for South Carolina this year. So we'll see if this schedule, again, with some tough road games, but bye weeks at very preferred times, I would say. We'll see if that gives them a shot to maybe take that next step, maybe get that additional win, and maybe make a run at the college football playoff in 2025. Before we get to the record projection, just wanted to let you know, if you're a South Carolina fan, we do have a South Carolina channel. Head on over there, subscribe, check it out. I'll put a link down in the description of this video. South Carolina surprised most with their record in 2024. So what's the projection look like in 2025? Well, let's take a look. And first, let's actually look back at the projections from the last 4 years. So this is with our projected record formula. In 2021, they were projected to go 5-7. They went 6-6. In 2022, projected to go 7-5. They went 8-4. In 2023, projected to go 7-5. They went 5-7. And then this past season, projected to go 6-6. They went 9-3. So I would say overall these projections have been pretty close. They were 1 game better in 21 and 22. They were 2 games worse in 23. But last year was the year where they really, I think, exceeded expectations. Did a lot better than the projection. Getting to 9-3 when they were projected to go just 6-6. Remember, that was coming off of a 5-7 year, and I don't think most people had South Carolina getting anywhere near 9-3. So let's see if they can do that again. We'll see what the projection is. And again, here is the schedule. This is the scale that we use. So South Carolina in our tier rankings, this is all based off of our tier rankings. South Carolina is a tier 2 team. So they're in that second tier. That means if they play a tier 3 team, then the game is a 61 to 70% game. If they play that game on the road, though, it drops to a 50-50 game. And of course, they play any other tier 2 teams, home or away. Those are going to be in the white, the 40 to 60% range. So that's kind of the way it works. And again, I like to make this comparison. This is not based off of predicting point spreads, but it kind of works out this way. The games that wind up in the white, those are usually games where the spread's going to be very low, 3, 4, 5 points. 61 to 70 games, those are games where the spread's going to be about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. 71 to 80, then you're talking double digits, and over 80%, that's like 20 plus point spreads, and those are the games that we count as pretty much guaranteed wins. So let's jump right in. And again, no human element here. This is all based off of a mathematical formula. We won't be doing actual predictions until after Memorial Day. So let's go. We got 3 easy wins potentially. And look, this is where, again, these are our mathematical numbers. Like, it's a formula. I do not think they have over an 80% chance to beat Kentucky, and maybe even and Coastal Carolina, or maybe they do. Maybe it's close to 80%, but it's definitely not a guarantee. Those games are not anywhere near 100%. Again, we've got Coastal Carolina in a very tough spot on the schedule, but it's all based off of our tier rankings, and these teams are in low enough tiers where it does wind up with South Carolina in the green, and then South Carolina State. Of course, that should be an easy win. That's a guaranteed win right there. All right, so how about games in the blue? You got Virginia Tech and Vanderbilt. So they are a couple of tiers below South Carolina. They are not road games for South Carolina, even though the Virginia Tech game is a neutral site game. So that's why they wind up in the blue. Again, though, will South Carolina be double-digit favorites in these 2 games? I don't know. I think it's going to be right around 10, so it's a close one. So if anything, I would say so far, looking at these numbers, maybe this formula is underrating the opponents a little bit. Not that they're overrating South Carolina. Again, they're just underrating the opponents, because I think those games will be a little bit tougher than these percentages would tell us. But that's where we are with those two games. And then you got Oklahoma in the purple. So Oklahoma is a tier 3 team. The game is at home. So we expect South Carolina to be favored by about a touchdown. And I do think that does work out with the point spread in that one. So yeah, Oklahoma game, South Carolina will be favored in, but not going to be an easy win by any means. And then you've got the rest of these games: Missouri, LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Clemson. For Missouri, that's a game against a tier 3 team, but it's on the road. LSU a tier 2 team, Alabama a tier 2 team, Ole Miss a tier 2 team, Texas A&M a tier 2 team, and then Clemson a tier 2 team. So you're talking about playing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that are in that second tier in college football. They don't play any tier 1 teams, but you got a bunch of games against tier 2 teams, and then again Missouri and Oklahoma in tier 3. So all these games actually come out to be 50-50 games. These are the games that could go either way. That's why, again, I think it's going to be tough for South Carolina to do better than 9-3 this year, because if they just split these games, then they're going 9-3, and that means also beating Oklahoma, beating Vandy, beating Virginia Tech, which they might not do. So the odds would tell us, again, you average all this out, that the projection for South Carolina is 8-4. So an 8-4 projected record for South Carolina, and I actually think that's very fair when you look at the schedule. Not saying that's what I'll predict. I might go 9-3. I might go 10-2. I might go 7-5. I don't know. It's a long ways away from me making predictions. But again, I do think this is a pretty fair prediction or projection, because like I said, if you split those games, that's 3 losses, and the odds would tell you if you've got a 65% game, a 75% game, another 75% game, odds would say that you might slip up, you might lose one of those games, and that's how you get to 8-4. So yeah, 8-4, 9-3, that's where I would have the projection. So I think this is very fair for South Carolina. Obviously, it would be a disappointment coming off of the year they had last year, but again, you're talking about a tough schedule. Clemson's going to be, I think, improved this year. That'll be tough. You've got a very tough road game against Texas A&M, tough road games against Missouri, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama. We know will be tough, and even Oklahoma, I think, is going to be improved. So a pretty tough schedule for South Carolina, and a projection that does come out a little bit lower, 8-4 for them in 2025. So give me your thoughts on South Carolina. What's your very early projection? Let me know down in the comments below. And just a quick reminder, memberships are now available. You can sign up today, get early access to videos like this and much, much more. Check it out. Become a member today.